Hello, everyone, and welcome to Autism Stories. I'm your host, Doug Bletcher, the founder of Autism Personal Coach. Autistic people are the true experts of the autistic experience, and Autism Stories is where we interview autistic people and others in the autistic community to learn from their stories. Many of those stories deal with finding purpose, which is so essential in all of our lives. And definitely a great way to find that purpose is through special interest. On today's episode of Autism Stories, Michael Andolsek shares his special interest of fashion with us and how it led him to a career he loves. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Michael, thanks so much for joining us on Autism Stories.
Oh, thank you for having me, Doug. Appreciate this.
I wanted to start off and learn, where does your story in the autistic community begin?
Well, I was diagnosed at 21, and right away started learning quite a bit about autism, reading a lot of books, meeting with my psychologist fairly regularly, and then through the center that she worked at, I had the chance to decorate when they were renovating and redoing their space, and met more people on the spectrum. And then down the road, starting my company, it included people on the spectrum too. I've had the chance to meet with different organizations and speak and listen at conferences and meet others on the spectrum in those places too. And it's been very interesting to get to know different people's perspectives and their lives and how autism impacts them. At 21 is when I started, and I'm 29 now.
Now, you developed a passion for fashion, and at 17 years old, started to study about the basics of the fashion industry at Salt Lake Community College Fashion Institute. How did your special interest for fashion develop?
Well, I did not like participating in gym class. So in high school, when I was about 15 and a half, my best friend loved clothing and fashion, and she decided that she would bring in her magazines and we would look at those instead of participating in gym. And I was just enthralled. I mean, the photographs of the clothes themselves, the way they were shot, the colors, the way it was styled, it was so captivating, and I immediately found a kind of a fun world. It was like when I was smaller and growing up with my siblings. We would play dress up, and those clothes were much more fantastical than what you see in real life. And looking at the magazine was kind of reminiscent of those clothes, the dress up ones, sparkles, and just glitz and glam, and I could kind of escape, I think, from the difficulties that I was going through. Since I hadn't been diagnosed yet, there were a lot of challenges that I didn't know how to cope with. So I think I latched on, and I just never looked back. I really, really enjoyed it.
So about 2 years after you started to study fashion, you moved to Paris to continue your studies. How did living in a different culture shape your world as an autistic person?
Well, it's what brought me back home to be diagnosed. I was really struggling while living there. I found it quite tricky. Food is always been a challenge for me, and my diet really suffered because I didn't have the food I was used to, and the few things that I liked just weren't that healthy for me. So living off of Nutella and baguettes and Subway, that's it. It just doesn't help your body and then your mind as you're trying to cope with things. I didn't speak French fluently, although my classes were all in French, and everywhere you go, that's just what you speak too. I think that was challenging, and not having certain coping skills, not having learned any to kind of help me with all the stress of my life there. At some point, it just kind of cracked, and my parents said, let's bring you home, And that's when everybody said, well, has he ever been tested for autism? So that's how my experience shaped me living over there. It was marvelous, but also quite difficult.
Do you think you would have been diagnosed if you hadn't went to Paris?
I don't know. I think it took something pretty strong, like that, pretty serious. Being on my own for so long. I came home for Christmas at one point, but otherwise, I'd speak with my family over Skype. But I lived a pretty quiet and lonely life over there. Not interacting with very many people because I was nervous about speaking. I had a lot of homework to get done. Classes were very intense, and I was very determined to succeed. So I think I set myself up, for a crash, and then of course it happened, and I don't know if that would have happened in any other circumstances or not.
So you returned to the States and eventually started your very own fashion label, Andolsek. What prompted you to go the route of becoming an entrepreneur in the fashion industry?
Well, actually, so when I returned home, it took a little while. It was a couple of years before I felt like I could get back into anything. My parents thought, let's just take it easy, and so I did, and worked on myself, and went, did a lot of therapy, figured out, how I could address certain challenges that I felt I faced, and come up with ways to help me succeed in life, in general. So after focusing on that for several years, then I decided it was about time to get back into work of some sort. The option of going back to school was presented, and I immediately turned that down. I didn't want to go through that again, whether it was in English or not, in the States or not. I felt I had a fair amount of education under my belt. Of course, there's always more to learn in clothing, but why not go ahead and get a job? I didn't want to move away, though. And most jobs in fashion are on the East Coast or in Los Angeles. But if you're living in the United States, you're predominantly in New York City. So I thought, if I'm going to stay here and work on fashion, I really have to start my own business. And that's how it was born. My sisters said they'd help me out, and they sure did. And my parents gave me a tremendous amount of support. And now we're 3 years and a half going. Hopefully we won't shut down the coronavirus.
And how have your sisters been helpful with your company?
Well, none of us have any business training. However, everybody's anxious to succeed, I think, because they all like clothes too. So we have a shared enthusiasm for, making fun and feminine products. They try them on, they go, oh, maybe we should make this instead. So I work on, a different design or whatever. And because of that, then they're, they're eager to participate in any way they can. They're also very loving sisters. I've been very fortunate to have siblings that really care about me, and each other too. But they want to see me grow and enjoy life, so they step in and whenever I find something challenging, then they offer help. For example, finances, or event planning, and meeting with multiple vendors, at a time. Then they come in and they say, well, maybe we could take on this instead of you. And, it doesn't always work out because we're all learning. None of us have had training in what we're doing, with the exception of me in clothing. But it's still a great help.
And one initiative that I know has been important to your company is making sure you're making a concentrated effort to hire other autistic people. What have you learned in the 3+ years of employing other autistics?
Well, it hasn't worked out very well for me. So I now contract out most of my work. We started out with a certain amount of employees, and I had a lot of confidence in my plan. My thought was, if each person focuses on what they do well, then we'll all be fine. The problem is I created an environment that was I was so focused on accommodating everybody else that my responsibilities, my work was suffering. So, and if you're going to lead, you can't do a bad job, So it was like, I'm going to have to focus more on me and not so much on everybody else if this is going to work. So we changed things around, and we have people that work, from home, or that will come in on a certain basis and work with us that are on the spectrum. But I think if to make it succeed, it would take a different manager maybe in charge than me, because I have a hard time focusing on both creating the right atmosphere and making sure everybody is feeling comfortable and productive, and motivating myself to get projects done. So it's been very interesting. We have shifted quite a bit to a lot of mentorship, and we have interns as well, and that's been very fun to see growth. Other individuals who are interested in pursuing careers in fashion reach out and ask for advice, and we share what we can, and we support and cheer them on, and it's really fun, and we do contribute a bit that way too. And our efforts have included, going to schools and participating in fundraisers that help, programs and communities out as well. And I can better do that I think I'm better suited for that than overseeing a workforce made up of people with autism.
So, as an entrepreneur myself, I am interested in every aspect of entrepreneurship, I found out. And one aspect is the look of one's business, which will include a company's logo. Your logo is an A box stamp. What is the significance of this?
Oh, well, I really just like the look of it. I wanted something that, corresponded to the name of our brand, which is, Andolsek. So, out and sort of playing around with that. I really like sharp lines. I prefer squares and rectangles to circles and ovals, and I certainly use curves in my work, but and play with lines like that. But overall, I wanted something that was sharp and crisp, and I don't know. I kind of drew this box, and then other shapes around it too, and just kept whittling them away, and preferred just the simplicity of the letter A with the thin line around it. Yeah, and in our Arial font, I just love the way it looks, which is the same. I chose the name for the company simply based on the way I like it written out in Arial font. I thought I like the way this looks. It sounds kind of unique, but to me, it was more about how will this look on tags? When you unzip your dress, or you get the box in the mail, or the garment bag. How does that look? And because clothing is so visual, so the packaging and our branding is too, and that's why I made those decisions to go with those two things.
What about the colors? That's certainly an important part of the look of any business. There's a strong emphasis, it seems, on using the color yellow. You have a hashtag built around this with hashtag I shop yellow. Why yellow and not green or purple or any other color?
I was trying to think of what other businesses were using in clothing, and yellow was not very common. Here and there it's used, but it's not associated quite strongly with any particular brand, luxury or not. And so I thought, well, if we're going to distinguish ourselves from others, then this could help, So it's a very happy, cheery color. It took a bit of time to decide on the right hue, what to complement it with. And so we selected gold and white, and now we're introducing black as well. So you see that in components of our packaging, for example. But I liked so many colors that it really came down to just, what will distinguish us from other people. That's why we've got yellow. And then, we are using it in the marketing way now, because it is somewhat unique to us, at least here in Utah. So we're, promoting that I Shop Yellow tag, and a lot of yellow at our events.
How can people go about purchasing some of your clothing and accessories? Is it just through online or is it in
It's,
stores?
we don't sell to any stores right now. We have no wholesale accounts. We haven't ever had any, actually. And we don't have any plans to change that. Right now, our apparel, ready-to-wear apparel, is available exclusively at our private events. We host fashion shows or get-togethers where women are able to see the pieces on models, and then afterwards, if they feel inclined, and they can try the pieces on themselves and order a few items. Sometimes people see other women wearing them, and then will inquire us and inquire, and then we'll ship them an item or so. But mostly our sales are done right at our event, so you have to attend an Andolsek gathering. And our brooches, that's our newest item. Our newest venture is introducing accessories, and those are available on our website in addition to our event. And then we have our custom. Our main work is our custom work, which is Andolsek Precision, and that is done in our studio. We produce it all here in Salt Lake City. It's not mass produced. Everything is made specifically for the client, and we have women who travel from out of state to visit us.
Thinking about your products, I'm interested in the materials that you use. When thinking about these materials you use, how much thinking goes into maybe some of the sensory sensitivities, especially relating to touch and smell of the materials?
Well, I only choose fabrics that I don't think that don't smell too much to me. For our ready-to-wear apparel, I will choose a bunch of fabrics, and I only select fabrics that I'm not finding offensive odor-wise. They feel great against the hand. They're behaving the way they should according to the design that we're going to be manufacturing. There's not enough drapes, and we find something else. So I choose the fabric based on what I like. But when it comes to our custom apparel designs, sometimes women have something specific in mind, and I might not love it. So I have to go on a hunt for things that are similar, that have similar characteristics, but won't perhaps smell or quite frustratingly when you're sewing with them. How textiles, the materials you're working with, can affect your attitude on the project, and it's pretty pissed off because I don't like the way something smells, or I'm struggling to keep it in place as I'm pinning or something. Then the project just doesn't move along very well. So it's very important for me to keep that in mind. But it's natural for me to choose the fabrics before I start working with them, knowing what I need from them and what I can't handle, if they're not smooth or rough enough or whatever.
And you were talking earlier about brooches and how that's an accessory that Andolsek has focused on. Why did you choose brooches?
We use a lot of custom buttons in our apparel. So they're all made by a jeweler in Los Angeles. And I have really, really always loved looking at them. And I feel like I see them all the time and never get tired of them. So why not come up with something where we can incorporate them aside from the jackets and dresses that we implement those pieces to. So the brooches were a fun idea, to kind of put a bow and then have a centerpiece, a pin on the back, and use these crystal and nickel plated buttons. And I like bows. I think that they're very feminine looking. I think they reflect the overall aesthetic of our brand. And we offer them in different colors and play around with different types of ribbons or materials to construct the bows from. And they're really a neat outlet for me to be creative with, because it's different than clothing. I'm restricted just to the silhouette of the two tails and the wings, and that's it. And then I'm going to have a centerpiece. So I find it very enjoyable.
Thinking about the fashion industry, what advice would you give to any autistic listeners that want to get involved in fashion?
Advice is hard to give because I think, everybody's got their own specific set of circumstances, and I don't always know what everybody's capable of, how far they can push themselves or can be pushed by others, But I think it's important that if you yourself find that this is really what you want to pursue, then keep at it. There are people who are willing to help and to teach and to lend you their time and their materials, their knowledge to share their knowledge with you, and you can make a career out of it. It's very possible.
Oh, Michael, I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks so much for sharing your story with us today.
Oh, absolutely. I found this quite interesting. I've never done a podcast before. It's unique. My first time. Thank you for letting me participate. I appreciate it. I'm very flattered and included. Thank you very much, Doug.
Thanks to everyone for listening, and thanks so much to Michael for the conversation. To learn more about Michael's company, Andolsek, check out the podcast description for this episode. If you'd like to be notified about each week's episode of Autism Stories, we suggest you subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform. We would also appreciate it if you could give us a positive rating and review, as it will help others to learn about Autism Stories. When you're autistic, the world isn't designed with your unique traits in mind, and everyday demands can feel insurmountable. At Autism Personal Coach, we provide autistic adults and teens hard-to-find support to live self-sufficient and purpose-driven lives through our private coaching and community events. Visit autismpersonalcoach.com to learn more about what we do. On next week's episode of Autism Stories, we're thrilled to have Haley Moss return as we discuss the documentary on Netflix, Love on the Spectrum. Talk to you then.